The Denon DHT-S517 is a 3.1.2 soundbar with Dolby Atmos support. In this review, you can see how it compares to its rivals and to see if it's actually worth its price tag. It can be found for roughly £350 in the UK and around $450 in the US. So to kick things off, I want to talk about its aesthetics, and personally I think it looks pretty good, be it in terms of the soundbar unit itself or indeed the subwoofer, both of which have got a fabric mesh type of look at the front and a black plastic towards the rear. Elsewhere, the soundbar and the subwoofer unit are pretty compact, and therefore means that if you're going to be wall mounting it and or placing it on a cabinet like myself in front of a 55-inch TV, it means that it won't take up too much space, and nor will it obscure some of your television viewing experience. Now, to interact with the soundbar, there's some physical buttons found on the main soundbar unit itself, and therefore makes it quite intuitive. However, if you want some further customization and you want to control the soundbar from afar, you can use the wireless remote. Now, the remote itself doesn't feel or look that premium, but it does exactly what it says on the tin and gives you all the appropriate controls that you're going to need for this Denon soundbar. On the subject of interacting with your soundbar, when you are playing around with it, you will notice that there's a small little LED that's found towards the front side of the main soundbar unit. This is quite handy, not only to know the type of content that's being played back, but also in terms of the settings that you're adjusting. Say, for example, if you're going via the different EQ presets, it will change color and or flash in a certain way in order to indicate what mode is actually being selected. Moving swiftly on, we get onto connectivity. Now, over wireless, you're only limited to Bluetooth, whereby the SBC codec is supported only. Alas, Wi-Fi is not supported, so you don't have the ability to use Apple AirPlay or the likes of Chromecast, which is quite a shame. So therefore, if you want to benefit from the highest quality audio fidelity, you'll want to plug it in. Here you've got a 3.5mm jack, optical and HDMI. Now, you've also got an HDMI output, and this has also got ARC and eARC capabilities. The latter is better, whereby it gives you uncompressed Dolby Atmos data, but don't fret if you've got an older television like myself, then here it will run over ARC and there'll be no problems when it comes to outputting Dolby Atmos or any other content. So with all of that in mind, I should just reiterate that this is a 3.1.2 channel soundbar. The 0.2 is the upward firing drivers, the 0.1 is a wireless subwoofer, and the 3 is the forward facing drivers, and indeed you do not have any sideward firing drivers. The same could be said about a few of its competitors. Now we'll be going on to a music demo. Now, first off, I'll be using Priya J's track, which is titled Falling, and I'll be flicking through the different preset EQs that can be found on the remote. Then I'll be going to a piece to camera, where I'll be presenting the Honda HRV on TotallyEV's channel, and here I'll be using the dialogue modes, again found via the remote control. This will hopefully give you an indication of how it sounds like. Of course, it's never ideal via my camera and my microphones, and of course being compressed over YouTube, but nevertheless it'll give you a small little taster.
But it's floating, I'm always hoping. When I reach the brink, don't stop the thing. I always sink, and now I'm alright. Don't waste your time telling me what to do, 'cause I guess I'm stubborn like that. Just listen to my track. Call me a
to 50 kilograms of additional weight, and that's thanks to the built-in roof rails. Now, this perfectly leads us onto its exterior design, where subjectively we think the new HRV, from its front bullish design thanks to the use of the grille and also the headlights, to its sporty whereby you've got 18-inch alloys that come fitted as standard, and then you've got this kind of nice sleek design around these side skirts. As for the stick, and that's also due to the tail lights that stretches from the entire width of the vehicle. Now you've also got a built-in spoiler that adds to the overall position. So with the audio demos out of the way, let's get onto my subjective opinion. Now first off, I should point out that I actually preferred using this soundbar on the music preset. It seemed to result in the best sort of EQ. And here you don't have the ability to adjust all the frequency range, but you do have a bass EQ that you can adjust via the remote, and this directly impacts the overall subwoofer volume and indeed the impact that it has. In my case and in my room's acoustics, and of course it will differ from yours, I added only one notch because I thought it was plentiful. Now the amount of quantity of bass that was there was certainly felt, both in the mid-bass and sub-bass frequencies. However, the overall sub-bass extension was a little bit cut short. In comparison to subwoofers out there which are larger, or indeed the soundbars units that have a larger subwoofer, these Denon soundbar just really can't compete in this department. But in comparison to ones that come in at the same sort of price tag, I will say that it's pretty much on par. The one that comes to mind is the Samsung Q700A, and here I feel the Denon soundbar is pretty much on par when it comes to its sub-bass extension. As for its mid-bass, it does give you plenty of presence and a heartfelt sort of sound, and therefore kept me excited when I was listening back to my favourite tracks. As for the mid-range, it is quite pushed back and recessed. It's almost no surprise given the pretty hefty bass response, and even though you can go via the dialogue modes, it will then skew the rest of the frequency range. In my case, I left the dialogue modes off, at least when I was listening back to music or watching movies, and therefore meant that I was having a little bit of a subdued vocal experience. This is almost yet again no surprise for a soundbar of its class and indeed price, but it's just something I thought to highlight. It's something that potentially those people who are very much conscious about the mid-range response and the entire frequency range as well might want to look into investing a little bit more onto their unit that they're purchasing. Now, what I'm trying to point out over here is that the mid-range isn't its forte, but will suffice. If you're going to be listening to podcasts or let's say news broadcasts all the time, then you're definitely going to want to dial that dialogue enhancer, whereby I felt that the medium level adjusted the level pretty well and therefore didn't drown out the other frequencies all that much, and then brought the mids to the foreground. So it's a very much a useful addition that Denon have included over here, and I can see a lot of consumers actually using the feature. So moving on to the highs, here I do feel that they are rolled off at the top end, and as a result the overall experience is somewhat subdued. Now this is very much the same case that could be said about a lot of its competitors, so it's no real overly criticism about this Denon soundbar, but it's just something I thought that you should be aware about. Now as for the overall soundstage, given the fact that this does not have sideward firing driver or indeed a higher driver configuration, it means that the soundstage does feel a little bit closed. While you will get a pretty loud volume and you might be able to fill a pretty small room, if you've got a larger room or indeed want a real cinematic experience, you're truly going to have to invest more money on a soundbar unit to get that sort of, well, real Dolby Atmos experience. Now this perfectly leads me onto the overall metadata that you can get with this soundbar, and indeed Dolby Atmos is the talk of the town. Now the Dolby Atmos metadata gives you height information, but due to the emission of sideward firing drivers doesn't give you the full sort of Dolby Atmos effect. Nevertheless, I'm going to get onto a little audio demo where I'll be playing Transformers Age of Extinctions, and then I'm going to be going via Dolby Atmos, Dolby Digital, and then via PCM. And hopefully my camera and microphone setup and the YouTube compression will be giving you a sort of indication of how the soundbar actually performs when it's faced with such. I should point out that I actually preferred using the pure EQ preset when it came to watching movies or indeed having Dolby Atmos content. Now on that note, Dolby Atmos did add extra height information and therefore gave a little bit of a better cinematic experience, although it's not a night and day difference over Dolby Digital, and hopefully my demos were able to sort of portray that. And that is purely because of the somewhat limited driver configuration that I touched upon before, whereby you've got the emission of sideward firing drivers or indeed a larger driver configuration, which really would have given you that heightened driver experience, and yes, pun intended. Now as for PCM, of course it does take a massive hit in terms of the overall audio fidelity, and as such Dolby Digital or indeed Dolby Atmos do give you a superior listening experience. So therefore, if you are watching a Blu-ray film, or for example you're watching regular terrestrial HD TV, you're going to be able to enjoy better audio in comparison comparison to having via a pure PCM input. So with all of that said, what do I make about the Denon DHT-S517? Well, I think it does well across the frequency range, and while it doesn't quite excel in every department nor offer a few of the features of its competitor such as the Samsung Q700A, I still think it's a worthwhile alternative and one that I can actively recommend. As such, it gets my Best Buy award. Now, I'd be intrigued to hear your thoughts of the soundbar down in the comments section below, and if you've liked this independent detailed review, definitely do drop a like, subscribe and hit that bell notification, all of which are greatly appreciated. And of course, if you've done that already, I just want to thank you in advance. As such, I've been Totally Dubbed, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.